testing, hello, test, check, testing, check, hello. Test. Test. Okay, Suresh. என்ன சொன்னா
classroom, dear friends, all the people sitting behind, at the end, please move forward. The second row is empty. Please move in, closer. The Vice Chancellor is going to be joining us in maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And have you started live streaming? Is it live? It's live right now? Okay. So we will, while the Vice Chancellor will join us, let's start. We have an invocation. We have with us Videsh Gokul. He is a foreign student in the Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication from Mauritius. And he has taught himself how to play the flute through online classes. So Videsh is going to share the joy of music with us. And I invite Videsh to start with an invocation. And whenever the Vice Chancellor joins us, we'll fill this up with music till then. And then we'll formally start off. Over to you, Videsh. Thank you, Vignesh. Like I just said, Vignesh is a foreign student from Mauritius in the Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication. And Vignesh, quickly, can we have a short invocation, Vaishnava Jayanti? Are you ready? So we will join in the spirit of Vaishnava Jayanti, a bhajan that Gandhiji loved a lot. And remember the spirit of good of all and the welfare of all. And then we start off. Yeah. Thank you so very much, Vignesh, for helping us start this event on a very nice, melodious, and a musical note, and very inspiring, ideas which are carried through the lyrics of the note. I welcome all of you today to this prestigious lecture being delivered today with the august presence of a lot of people from the university. as a part of the Ministry of External Affairs India at 75 Videsh Niti Distinguished Lecture Series, the Ministry of External Affairs, Government of India, with Pondicherry University, its Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication. We are happy to bring to you a lecture by former Ambassador Gurjit Singh. He's been Ambassador of India to Germany, to Indonesia, Ethiopia, ASEAN, and the African Union Chair, CIA Task Force on Trilateral Cooperation of Africa, and he's currently a professor in IIT Indore. The theme for today's lecture is Increasing India's Social Impact and Contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, a case in communication management and intercultural dialogue. This lecture is open to all in the public and is being live streamed on YouTube for the benefit of those who cannot physically attend the lecture globally. And the introduction to Ambassador Gurjit Singh, can we have the slide, please? I would just like to give a short introduction to him, please. As you can see here, Ambassador Gurjit Singh was appointed to the Indian Foreign Service in 1980, and he has served in Indian missions in Tokyo twice, Colombo, Nairobi, Rome, and was the Ambassador of India to Ethiopia from 2005 to 2009. Indonesia 2012 to 2015, Germany 2012 to 2015, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Djibouti, then Timor-Leste, ASEAN, and the representative of India to the African Union, the Economic Commission for Africa, and IGAD. He was also the Deputy Permanent Representative of India to UNEP and UN Habitat. Ambassador Singh chairs the CIA Task Force on the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor and comments on current issues pertaining to international affairs, development, and investment promotion in India and abroad. He frequently contributes essays and articles to journals and books on issues related to economic development and trade. You can see the covers of some of the books that he's done, and he's brought them along, and you're going to see them in a short while. It's really wonderful, the kind of work he's done, the publications he's done. He published The Abalone Factor, an overview of India-Japan business relations in 1997, which won him the Bimal Sanyal Award for Research by a Foreign Service Officer. His subsequent books include The Injera and the Parantha, Enhancing the Ethio-India Relationship. We have a copy of the book here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it and reading it, published in 2009. And Masala Bumbu, I hope I pronounced it correctly, 2015. Very interesting titles, I must say, very creative. Ambassador Singh is also the author of an Amar Chitra Katha, which I found absolutely fascinating. I will share the link with all of you. It's available free online for anyone to go through it. On the legacy of the India-Indonesian relationship, it's called Travels Through Time. His edited book, Opportunity Beckons, Adding Momentum to the Indo-German Partnership, was released in January 2017 in Berlin. The word Harambee, right? The word Harambee is a Swahili word for cooperation, and Ambassador Singh's latest book, Harambee Factor, India-Africa Economic and Development Partnership 2022, explores and analyzes the evolution of India's development cooperation with Africa. This is a book we hope to get for our library soon because it's just been released, and I'm really looking forward to hearing his worldwide experience and rich experience of going across continents and the things he's done, which will help all of us to learn and expand our horizons. On this occasion, I also welcome Professor Gurjit Singh, our Vice Chancellor, who's here with us. Always encouraging, and it was interesting to know that he's actually had so much related to the event to tell us about, and I think we should have a talk on this another day. I think it merits it, a conversation. Maybe both of you have a conversation and we all join in. A coffee with Karan style, maybe. So, and using our cups as well then. And so I'm happy that, that we have some of our deans and HODs of the various departments with us. I welcome you all, and all our faculties from the Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication. Then we also have faculties from other departments. I welcome you all. All the students and scholars I welcome you all. And we have two special guests, one from Auroville, who would be joining us in the roundtable discussion. He's here, Lakshay. Welcome, Lakshay. And we also have the communication officer of the French consulate in Pondicherry, Nicholas Joffrey. Thank you for coming in, Nicholas. He's also there with us. And we hope to have a good roundtable discussion at the end, including all of you, your questions and answers or whatever. Now, before we actually start on with the proceedings of the day, I would request maybe Professor Gurjit Singh and Ambassador Gurjit Singh to come up on the dais. And Mrs. Neeru Singh is also here. She's a former IS officer. Ma'am, I invite you on the dais for the opening. Please, please. She's also married to Ambassador Gurjit Singh, but she's an IS officer of great reckoning, and she's done a lot for the United Nations and for the Indian government. Please, sir, ma'am. So I would like Professor Gurjit Singh to do the traditional honor that we do in Pondicherry of honoring Professor Gurjit Singh with the traditional honor of putting a shawl. And I also request Professor Gurjit Singh to welcome and felicitate Mrs. Neeru Singh with this bouquet of flowers, which will always be alive. Please, please. And of course, Professor Ambassador Gurjit Singh is also going to present his book, Masala Bumbu, to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Gurjit Singh. And now I invite Professor Gurjit Singh to give the presidential address, to deliver the presidential address. Sir.
Well, friends, it's a great delight to have a person of the caliber of Ambassador Gurjit Singh here, who is going to talk about many issues. And I deem it a great honor to have him here, along with his wife, who is also an IAS officer, served most of the times in UNO, along with him. And I don't know, when I said ambassador, ex-ambassador, foreign ambassador, and wife who is an IAS officer. Before I begin, I don't know, some of you might, who are from foreign places, would be asking, ambassador, you're familiar, but when we say, who is an ambassador, what does one do, what kind of a duties one performs? Well, I read a book written by a diplomat again, and who described an ambassador is one who teaches you the art of saying no by saying yes, right? That's a great quality these people have, and rest I'll talk about. And who is an IAS officer? That again was written by an administrator who starts by saying somebody was moving around and he saw a fellow on the pole of a telephone wire, and he started asking, what are you doing? He says, I'm repairing telephone lines and this is the way we work. What do you do with this? For about 2-3 minutes he inquired, and they learned the art of this telephoning. And little ahead he went and he saw a plumber working. He says, what do you do here? He says, I repair these water lines, and this is what we do. Then after that, this, and this is the way water is supplied to the houses. Further, he saw some doctor with his stethoscope examining a patient, and he asked, what is this? This is a stethoscope, this is the way it works, and this is the way we carry out our duties. Meaning thereby, after knowing all this, the person becomes a master of doing all these works when one starts doing the jobs. So an IAS officer is one who has the perfection of doing any kind of a thing with a perfect sense of duty. So that's what she is. I think I have described it that way. So we are delighted to have this couple here with us. My dear friends, deans, the academic colleagues, the press reporters here, and our friend from the French consulate, Nicolas, who himself is a very wonderful photographer. And all our occasions, he's around with us. And all other friends, and above all, the students of EMMRC and UMISAC. I said I'm delighted to be here for two reasons. One, a very eminent speaker is going to be with us today, who will be sharing his thoughts. Secondly, it's a great delight to be here after this great pandemic, COVID, which has ended now almost, and we are seeing this hall back to full capacity. Otherwise, a time came when we were all getting used to addressing almost empty chairs. So it's a double delight for us, and I am really very happy to see all of you here. Now, India's role, everybody knows. Ambassador Singh will dwell more on that. But if you analyze, we have done so very well, and it is India's 75th year we are celebrating. And under that auspices, this lecture has been organized as a distinguished lecture series of the External Affairs Ministry. Yes, we are 75 years old, but what have we done? Most of the students, they ask me, sir, are we really mature enough to call us that way? Yes, we are, let me tell you. I'll just add few sentences. You look at the area, infrastructure, health services, education, how well we have done, you can judge by looking at what we were in 1947 and where we are now. We have enough food grain production. We are the largest producers of milk in the world. We have one of the best education systems in terms of what money one spends. We have the best health sector. Of course, there are problems to be addressed too, but then we have done exceedingly well. People come here for all kinds of treatment. And we have the largest number of graduates. We have, in foreign policy, if you talk about, there was a time we used to either align with eastern side or western side, and then a time came when we, three of these stalwarts, Nehru, Titu, and Nasser, they joined hands, and then they said non-aligned mission was one. Gradually, over the years, we have now come down to a position where we tell the world, look, this is our stand, we believe this way, our foreign policy is whatever is in our interest. We have reached that stage where we are in a position to say, yes, we believe in this, and we believe in this because this is in our interest. We would not have been in a position had we not done that well in all sectors. And I think we all should feel proud of the fact that we have really come of ages. We are doing very well in all sectors, and time is not very far off when probably we'll be celebrating our 100th independence year, when our country will be one of the best in the world. It is still one of the best. We'll be in the top 5 countries. Days are not very far off. And you will probably know that we are one of the richest and the youngest, one of the youngest nations in the world. The whole world is looking up to us. Whenever we go abroad to give lectures, I find in a lecture hall of this side, 5, 10, 20 students sitting. And when we tell them we are used to be addressing a class of 120, 150 without mic, they get a surprise of their lifetime. How do you manage? Why don't you send some of the students here? This is the stage we are in, that the whole world is looking up to us. They want our students to be there. They want our help in all sectors. This is the maturity of a nation. And that's why we say 75 years of Amrit Mahotsav. Therefore, I think no better person would have been there to talk more about whatever I have talked about than Ambassador Gurjit Singh. As you have heard from Dr. Radhika Khanna, what a distinguished career he has had. He has served as an ambassador in many of the countries, and he has headed many of the UNO's bodies. So nobody else would have been, no other better person would have been there to talk about all these issues. I'm sure this lecture is going to be of a great importance for all of you, and not only from the point of view of foreign policy or any other related area. Those who are working for their PhDs and various research areas, I think this lecture will give you a lead in what area to pick up and where exactly to fine-tune your international relations problems. I don't know how Ambassador Gurjit Singh came to know that I am a good cook. He's presented me a book. I love cooking, let me tell you. I would have said it on umpteen occasions. But then when he presented masala bamboo, well, I was delighted. I thought it's something to do with this, maybe Indonesian cuisines and others. So thank you so very much. We will treasure this. So I'll not add more. Those UMISARC people will know better that this association of SARC that we have, barring few problems, this is also emerging out to be a force. And the Indian Ocean, which was a neglected area earlier on, we used to all look up to Panama Canal and Suez Canal as the trade routes. Now Indian Ocean is emerging to be, in fact it has emerged to be the busiest trade route in the world. So this is where our country is coming up, and this is what we need to be all feeling proud of. So thank you so very much for sparing your time out, both of you, and we look forward to your lecture. I'll not stand in between you and Ambassador Gurjit's lecture. I invite him, and with a word of very sincere thanks from my side for sparing his time out. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lecture. I may have to pull myself out after a while, and if I'm through with that commitment, I'll come back again. Thank you, please.
So there's one little thing we want to do and add on to this, the icing on the cake as it were. We are lucky to be in a very green campus, and ma'am was asking me on the way when we were coming here, how big is the campus? And she was really like, wow. And I told her it's about 780 acres. Yeah, 820. So we have just made a short 2 minutes film on the green campus so that our distinguished guests can see what Pondicherry University looks like. And I request all three of them together to press the button here and release the film. It's been, no, it's taza. Aaj subah khatam hui hai. The edit has finished this morning. It is made by the EMRC team. Educational Multimedia Research Center does a lot of educational work. So they have worked and they have put together a short sampler of what is it to be in the green campus of Pondicherry University. So those of you who are online, and if you feel like coming to India and Pondicherry University, you know that you shouldn't be missing coming to Pondicherry University. Yeah, sirs. All of it together. Just press, Mr. Balamurugan, which button do you want to press? The play? The play button. And I think maybe you can turn your chair, so yeah. After the lecture and the roundtable discussion, we would be having high tea. And after high tea, Ambassador Gurjit Singh would be planting a tree at the Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication. We had Professor Gurjit Singh planting a tree for us, which symbolizes wealth, just 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago. And we're going to have another tree plantation today to continue that cycle and that connection with nature, because it's nature that nurtures us and nature that keeps us alive. So we will have a symbolic tree plantation to keep our momentum going, that the connection with nature, and he's agreed, and even ma'am's going to be there, and I really look forward to it. So thank you so much, Professor Gurjit Singh, and he has a very important meeting, so he would be stepping out for a while, and if possible, he would come back and join us for the roundtable discussion. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we will start with the lecture. So ma'am, you would feel comfortable sitting there, I think. The Wi-Fi mic for him, please. Can we have with the lapel mic for Ambassador Gurjit Singh, please? I request the students who are sitting in the aisle, there are around 5 chairs empty. Yeah, you can take them, please. In the third row, there's a chair. In the second row, there are 2 chairs. Nicholas, why don't you come in the front row, Nicholas? Nicholas, would you like to come to the front row, please? No? Okay. So just because the frame looks nice when it's filled. Check one. Leave the seats empty. If the faculty comes in, then you can step back. But otherwise, it's nice to have the front row full. Please, I request use the seats. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you.
This is for video live recording, sir. This. Thank you, sir.
Communication management, and what's the role of intercultural dialogue to foster harmony, cooperation, and progress, and how India can lead the way. Thank you so much, Ambassador Gurjit Singh, and over to you. Put another extra water bottle here, please. One more water.
Thank you so much, Professor Radhika Khanna, for your work. Professor Gurmeet Singh Ji, Vice Chancellor of this, what a wonderful green university. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I am very grateful to my old ministry for asking me to come here, and I am very proud to deliver the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav 75th lecture, anniversary lecture today. I am very happy to be in the midst of so many eminent faculty members. And most of all, I am most grateful to be among all you young people. Whether you are from India or from abroad, whenever I meet young people, I believe I am meeting the future. So I hope many years later you will look back, as Professor said, 100 years, you will look back at the 75th and then see over the next 25, where did India go on high speed? But for that, you are going to be responsible. And I hope today my speech and interaction will help you to think on those lines of where do we go from 75. So it is always a challenge to first understand our context. So where is the world today in which India is? This world has drastically changed over the last 3 years. One is the pandemic, Professor also referred to it, which has totally changed our world. It has almost deglobalized what we were told was globalization. It has created new challenges. Who thought a pandemic would be the ultimate challenge? We used to always say the challenge is terrorism, the challenge is climate change, and then out of the blue comes a pandemic and teaches you that you can't mess with Mother Nature. And then, if a natural disaster was not enough, we create a man-made disaster, the Ukraine crisis. We have not gone over the pandemic yet and still looking for economic recovery, and we dig our own grave even further. Now nobody says that the Ukraine war is murdering the climate, with countries going back to coal. So what it ultimately means, like I am lecturing to you, countries need not lecture each other, because the time has come to work together and stop apportioning blame and start accepting responsibility. I think that is the message which is prevalent today, and if we don't grasp it, we are going to have much more trouble than we think we have. One of the consequences of the modern world of 2022 is this: we don't know who to trust. The Vice Chancellor mentioned non-alignment. Today, seriously, can you think of some countries that you can trust fully? Because your interests have become compartmentalized. All these years, we were told, India and the Global South, that if you join the WTO, we will give you free trade. What we got was non-tariff barriers, and today innumerable sanctions at will of any country which chooses and has the power to do so. Do they impose sanctions through the United Nations? Sometimes, but they are mostly violated rather than implemented. So the peril of free trade which was there has become so dangerous that today say, no, 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 if I am producing the vaccine, I'll keep it to myself. So what you saw in the pandemic was almost the destruction of free trade. In Africa, you had the Africa Continental FTA, which said, open your borders. And what would the pandemic demand? Close your borders. No, these were real problems. How do you go ahead and do something which WTO wants, but WHO says don't? And they are all within the UN system. Second problem is, we always said that climate change is a problem. India always said that it is a common but differentiated responsibility, meaning I am not going to accept what, just for example, the French did to their country, or the Germans did, or the UK did. Yes, we are willing to take responsibility for now, but not the same responsibility. But the world is such an unfair place that people did not want to accept this principle of common but differentiated responsibility, except in words, not in reality. But this is not new. When the new international economic order came up in the 1970s, countries of the OECD had committed 0.7% of their GDP towards official development assistance. In 2021, there are only 4 countries who still meet that target. The 5th was the UK, but after Brexit, they have backtracked. So there are actually only 4 countries over a generation, over 50 years almost, who cannot fulfill the targets they themselves accepted, but of course, we must accept all the targets set for us. So, India had this problem that on trade and on climate change, we were an outlier. We were sitting in the corner, and every time there was an international meeting, fingers would be pointed to us. What happens now? Since Mr. Modi came to power, there are 2 significant changes which are noticeable. First, in 2015, at the Paris Conference of Parties on Climate Change, India and France, see, I'm saying nice things about France today, no jokes, okay, got together and launched the International Solar Alliance. This is a great idea to bring solar energy, and I was so happy, sir, to see in the film that you have gone solar in this university. What a great idea. So the Solar Alliance brings together countries in the temperate belt of the world and say, we have maximum sunshine, let us produce solar power for ourselves and then outside. So the International Solar Alliance will lead to one grid, one world by exporting. And India and France are the co-chairs. Now, the International Solar Alliance brings India into the center stage of climate change negotiations, because we have got very high commitments to produce solar power in India. And we are meeting those commitments. We are getting great support, let's say, from Germany, from the Nordics, from France, from many others, the UAE. Second, we have said that our India's nationally determined indices are very ambitious. We are sort of saying that we will be carbon neutral by 2070, and we mean it. We'll get there at 2070. There is not a lie about it. So today, most countries start trusting India on climate change targets. One of the biggest battles the developing world has fought is for additional finance for financing climate mitigation and adaptation. And we have started securing this additional finance. And when Prime Minister Modi went to Germany in May, Germany announced 10 billion euros for a green and sustainable partnership with India. 10 billion euros at a time when Europe is having major economic problems is not a small thing. And it is to be staggered over the next 8 years to 2030, which is the target date for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So I've shown you now that on climate change, India has moved center stage. India has acquired trust. India is not an outlier. India will perform to the best of its ability to save this planet along with all the responsible countries. Secondly, let's look at trade. India still stands for free trade, unimpeded by non-tariff barriers. We don't want FTAs to be misused. But we are wary of our large trading partners who often do not provide reciprocal access. Which is why in 2019, after 7 years of negotiation, of which I was also a part, India withdrew from the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which includes all the ASEAN countries and the 6 partners, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India. India withdrew, so now they are 15. So everybody thought India has gone back into a corner. But now you look that since the Quad 2.0 came up, everything is being seen strategically. Even trade is being seen strategically. So you see that Australia, which was actually a very difficult negotiating partner in our RCEP negotiations, in 2022, in January, we already signed a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with them. It was negotiated in 4 months, unheard of in international trade circles. We have opened very rapid discussions with the UK. UK, as you know, is out of Brexit, and now they are, out of the EU, and now they are racing the EU to do everything before the EU does. So they want India-UK FTA before the India-EU FTA. But India EU FTA has now got a strategic political push. So this is also moving. But meanwhile, we have signed another FTA with the UAE, again a big trading partner. So you see suddenly there is a spate of India signing. Everybody said India is out of the trade, but we are signing agreements. We are now negotiating with Canada. We are negotiating with EFTA. EFTA is the non-EU European countries. We have also asked Japan to review the CEPA with them, and we have also asked ASEAN to review the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement. So the point is that on trade, India understands the strategic value and has moved center stage. Today, every country wants to woo India because we are the largest market. We are also having a very large consuming middle class. We also have a good manufacturing base. The Vice Chancellor pointed out many of India's strengths. Those, along with all of you young people, are the future which everybody is looking at and coming to India and saying, let's go to India and manufacture. And this is what is called a resilient value chain. Essentially, in strategic terms, it means a China plus one policy. That don't put everything in China, also go to other countries, and India is one of them. Diplomatically, sort of saying China plus one, we call it strategic value chain, resilient value chain, which basically means that China can't control it. But let's not fool ourselves. We are pretty far from getting out of Chinese clutches, so we need to work hard. So essentially in this picture, what I want to say is the world is being pushed to bipolarization. Bipolarization means two big powers in the world. The United States pushing Europe, pushing Japan, pushing Asia, come behind it. The Russians are the problem. China pushing everybody else, saying Americans are the problem. But who are the problem? The problem is the quarrel between them. And that is where we are getting impacted. And this is where India wants to prevent bipolarization, but we want a multipolarization of functional cooperation, of economic cooperation, and no breaking the rules. This is what India wants. But the problem is many of our friends start fighting. The Russia-US battle in Ukraine is most detrimental to India because they are both our strategic friends. What do we do? So we have to wait it out. Now, this is where India's foreign policy of strategic autonomy makes sense. And this is not only India. Many countries today who are friends of the US, friends of Europe, or friends of Russia, but when it comes to a UN vote, often abstain or absent themselves or do something. This is strategic autonomy. They said, why am I being asked to face this headache? When non-alignment, sir, as you mentioned, was created, it became a movement. Strategic autonomy is like non-alignment, but it is not static. It is taken on issue by issue. Therefore, on some issue, India will oppose the Americans. On some issue, will oppose the Russians. On some issue, will oppose the Chinese. But the reality is on every issue, we are looking out for our national interest, not following any ideology. That is strategic autonomy. And this, there is no movement like the non-aligned movement. There is no identity card that I am a non-aligned country. But there is also no identity card that I'm a pro-US. See, India is one country which is in the Quad, which is in the SCO. We have exercises with the Americans. We have exercises with the Russians. That is India. How we can juggle this ball. So, Professor Saab was describing a diplomat. So, before you think that I'm a liar, I must tell you that a diplomat is a trained liar. A diplomat is an honest person sent abroad to lie for the good of his country. But that has fallen apart thanks to the internet. Because in the old days, you could think what to tell my government, and I write a report, it reaches a week later. Nobody else knows whether the Titanic sunk or not. But today, your ministry knows before you what is happening in the world because of the internet. So unless the internet is lying, you have no scope for lying. And the speed at which things are happening means you almost can't be lying down also. So neither lying by intent or lying by action. Both are not possible. Now let me move to the second part. COVID's reach is only just beginning to be felt. Global human development, which combines education, health, and living standards, could fall further for the first time since 1990. But the only way to save yourself is to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs are a roadmap for humanity. They encompass almost every aspect of human and planetary well-being, and if met, will provide a stable and prosperous life for every person and ensure the health of the planet. The pandemic also shows us the wisdom of what is already inherent in the SDGs. The challenges we face cannot be dealt with in isolation. So I already mentioned to you deglobalization. I mentioned the pandemic, sanctions, but there's another big problem, debt stress. Today countries don't want to borrow money. That is why the Chinese BRI and many other, even India's policy of lending soft loans, they are not enough because today countries do not have the wherewithal to repay. Look at Sri Lanka, big example. Difficult to repay because the pandemic has destroyed many of your sources of revenue. So we have to think beyond that. How do we implement and achieve the SDGs? Well before the SDGs were called the SDGs, I hope all of you know what the SDGs are. There are 17 of them, targets. India, soon after independence, started sharing its experience with other developing countries. It started with Indonesia and Myanmar with technical cooperation and educational scholarships. By 1964, the ITEC program, India Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, came up. This started programs where people from foreign countries could come to India, join these programs. These were not college scholarships, these were specialized programs, and covered a large amount of expertise that India had and built capacity in other developing countries. The United Nations only started calling this TCDC, Technical Cooperation Among Developing Countries, in 1978. But we are doing it since 1964 and even earlier. So there is a large amount of development cooperation that India did, which includes technical cooperation, includes consulting, the ITEC program, educational scholarships, humanitarian assistance, and since 2003, a large amount of loans, soft loans. The world of 20 years ago wanted those loans. So between 2003 and 2020, India has lent $32 billion to developing countries. Most of it goes to India's neighboring countries. 12 billion has gone to African countries. So this is something which has changed a lot of things in our partner countries. Many of these were employment generating projects. Many of them were water related projects, solar plants, training institutions. Let me give you two examples because they both fulfill the SDGs. that at the second India-Africa Forum Summit, we included civil society in India's development cooperation with Africa. One of them was through SEWA, Self-Employed Women's Association, who worked in 3 countries to create women's empowerment and share that experience of women's microfinance. Now, this is, at that time, nobody said this is SDG, but today, if you count, it's fulfilling an SDG. Then there is the Barefoot College, Solar Mamas program, where rural women were brought to India and trained to become solar engineers without being educated. This program is one of those amazing path-breaking programs, and it fulfilled 2 SDGs, women's empowerment, energy generation in off-grid villages. I have seen people's lives change in Ethiopia and Indonesia when in these remote villages, people went and set up, not people went, these ladies who were trained in Thilonia went back and set up and lit up their villages. It is an amazing thought when you see that a day which ended with sunset today has doubled. They have that much more time. In one village in Ethiopia, they told me, Ambassador, now we can deliver babies at night. You know, it makes no sense. But then you realize, my gosh, they had no light. But today in their little health center, they have put up solar lights so they can actually deliver, and women don't have to suffer all night in labor. And then they open night schools for their children. All through the day they are herders, evening they study. So I have seen lives change. So Indian development cooperation always brought the spirit of the SDGs without ever looking at them, but shone the light on the beneficiaries. My latest book, which was mentioned, is called The Harambee Factor. It is on India-Africa Economic and Development Partnership. Harambee is a Swahili word. It means the spirit of cooperation. So the difference between India and other partners of Africa, for instance, is that India is a partner. We don't tell them we want to do this, or this is what we will do, or this is how you must do it. Some partners do, and that is where the difference comes. So when asked, some sensible African says, well, so-and-so country does more, but India does better. What does India do better? India has that spirit of camaraderie. From the time of independence, countries looked up to us and said, if they can become independent, so can we. Then when we started sharing our experience, they said, if their parliament can work like this, so can ours. So start making their parliament more responsible. Then they said, if this country can develop, so can we. When they came to India under ITEC, saw what we were doing, they said, if they say, if you can have a Pondicherry University, why can't we? The main thing was that Indian investment transferred the most technology, created the most local jobs, and contributed the most to regional trade without looking for concessional overseas exports. Today, Africa's top 3 trade partners are China, India, and France. That is the difference. The old order has changed. So, to end this part of my talk, what I want to say is that India is seen in the spirit of Harambee as a country that can be emulated. A Rwanda believes it can be India. It never thinks it can be my other neighbor. It doesn't even think that way. But they see India as being. So now I come to my third aspect. How do we achieve the SDGs, which is what I have been coming to, in this fractured world, this broken up world? As Tagore said, world broken up into narrow fragmented walls. How do we repair this? And I told you that today, simply giving money which is loan, not acceptable anymore. How do we do this? And that is when we come to this concept called social entrepreneurship. I want you all to please listen to this because I hope you will all become entrepreneurs. So the message I give you is don't look for a job, create some. Social entrepreneurship is the process by which individuals, startups, and entrepreneurs develop and fund solutions that directly address social issues. A social entrepreneur, therefore, is a person who explores business opportunities that have a positive impact on their community, in society, or the world. Linked to this is the concept of impact investing. Impact investments are investments made with the intention to generate positive, measurable social and environmental impact alongside a financial return. Impact investments are made with the intention to generate a financial return besides achieving the SDGs. So achieving the SDGs is impact, but this is not charity. This is not a non-profit. You must have a business plan which will earn money and make your business work. Impact investment funds social entrepreneurs. So I hope I have established that link. So if you are a social entrepreneur, there are now many impact funds which are looking for good ideas. For instance, twice a year I do sessions with one institution over a global summit in India and an African summit in Nairobi. We have a large number of people with ideas, potential venture funders, impact investors, and a large amount of international donor agencies, USAID, DFID, AFD, FMO, KFW. These are all JICA. These are all the aid agencies of the G7 countries. Now, what do? Traditionally, they either gave you a loan or they gave you a grant. What they are now saying is, let's move from grant to impact investing. Meaning, I really don't want the money back, but if you can make it go around, it's much better. So today, many of these aid agencies are actually investing in Indian impact funds. So I know of one particular company which has got 8 funds and about $1 billion under management in India, Southeast Asia, and Myanmar and Sri Lanka. Now, lest you think that everything I said was nonsense, I can tell you that the one company is doing $1 billion of business on social entrepreneurship by funding people. There is the startup stage, but most impact investors will not fund startups. They will want you to really have proof of your business concept over 3 years, showing you a good, well, there are some who will do a startup also, but most will not. Most will say, let me see what you have in you. So supposing you want to say, I want to put up a dairy farm of 500 cows. So he says, can you please start with 5 and show me your intent? So this gentleman who had come back from the US actually went, did 5, and over 3 years took it to 50. And with that proof of concept, he went back. And this company said, man, this guy got it. So they funded him to go to 50,000 cows. And today that company is the largest milk producer in Eastern India. Largest. It's a social impact company. One person started with a company and said, there's so much plastic around us, I'm going to recycle this plastic. So they said, it's a great idea, waste management is one of the SDGs, go ahead. But they did not think that his proof of concept was ready. But he started with a 30-ton plant, funded by friends and family. Once that succeeded, the impact investment stepped in. They have got $12 billion into him. He is working today in 5 cities of India. And today, people are chasing him. Come to my city and do this. because he has got the talk that you collect the garbage, I'll buy it from the city, I'll recycle it. Plastic is recycled into 18 different ways and then sold to industry. And before the pandemic, that impact investment company was giving a return of 20% to its investors. You heard of the big pollution scare in North India. It also happens in Singapore. That is because in Sumatra they burn the plantations to plant this oil, palm oil. In North India they burn the rice plus stock for the next crop. This pollutes Delhi. There is a company now which actually goes to the farmer and says, you give me your field for 2 days. I will pay you per kilo for this thing that you want to burn, but don't burn it. And he brings the machine and takes it all out and pays him and takes it away. Then he stacks it up. Then he has contracts with industry who wants steam. So this all biomass is used as raw material to create steam in enclosed places. No pollution. And it creates energy. He is an impact investment company. So there are many ideas like this: women, education, labor training, and stuff like that. So, to put the whole circle back, this is what is happening. Now, in order to solve this problem in the world, we are creating more and more funds using this Indian model of impact investment and going to other countries. There are invitations from African countries, others, and some of the donors are now saying, yes, we will invest in you and let's go to Africa. We will invest in you, let's go to Sri Lanka. So there are specialized funds coming up to support this in different countries. At the same time, going back a step, and I told you that India's model of development cooperation is very well accepted in Africa. So, though many countries have long history in Africa, let's say the UK, France, to an extent Portugal, but India is talking to all of them, and we have what is called trilateral cooperation. In my title you see somewhere trilateral cooperation. This means that, let's say, France, India work together to do things in Africa. So far, it has largely been training. The USAID funds certain people who come from food processing industry to Indian institutions, paid by the Americans, trained in India, go back to the institution. It's largely been capacity building. Now we are moving to what is called impact investing by government funding. So as of 2022, the Ministry of External Affairs has a trilateral cooperation development fund, and the UK is the first country to put equal money with India, 157 crores. And this 314 crore fund will not be managed by government. It will be managed by SBI Caps, a bank. And they will look at where to invest in impact in Africa. At the time that we announced this, we had a representative of AFD from France who said we are discussing a similar arrangement with India. KfW of Germany is doing. So this idea is catching on. So what started in the private sector is now coming to government. But government is ready to put it in the private sector. So this cycle is moving nicely. Now, I am very happy that trilateral cooperation works, but yes, I am not saying this is the solution to every problem. It's a solution to some problem, and this is what we need to do. My final part is about communication. You saw my book, Masala Bumbu. Now, the Vice Chancellor was right to assume that it was a book about food, because you heard the word masala. Bumbu is the Indonesian word for masala. Got it? But masala to them is not like masala dosha. Masala means a problem. So the aim of the book was to say that very often we may think we understand each other, but actually we don't. That is the reason. So when we say masala dosha, we have that nice savory thing in front of us. To an Indonesian, masala dosha is mera dosh. You know dosha? Dosh? My fault? The big problem. Masala dosh. So big problem. How you use words. Similarly, Indonesia has the largest Buddhist and Hindu temples, Borobudur and Yogyakarta. But people have forgotten where it came from. So Professor Radhika Khanna mentioned my comic, Travel Through Time. This is of course an English version, but the real version is in Bhasa Indonesia. And we gave it free to Indonesian schools just to make them understand that India and Indonesia have traveled long through time. And Masala Bumbu showed that, Bumbu being spice, that spices are the ones which segregated us. Because the Dutch and the British divided Indonesia and India for spice trade. And that took us on different tracks. It is only Nehru and Sukarno fighting for independence who brought us together again. So the spice has many connotations between India and Indonesia. But if you grow spices well, you will get good agricultural produce, you will alleviate poverty, you will empower the small holding farmer. All these are SDGs. So I come back to the story of SDGs. This is my book on Ethiopia. It's called The Injera and the Parantha. So everybody thought this is also a book about food. Injera is the teff millet which they use. Rudely people call it a soggy dosha. But paratha is what in my part of the world people eat. And here there's so much in this book on climate because the then Prime Minister, here he is, he wrote the foreword to the book, Meles Zenawi. Unfortunately, he died too early. He was Africa's lead climate negotiator. And I used to have many discussions with him how we can improve climate. And he kept saying, I know India doesn't do well on this, but we still want to follow your model. We can't follow the European model, it doesn't fit. So, again, acceptance of Indian model. So, which means the responsibility on India to do better, because many countries are looking up to us. So all you young people need to know that everything you do, as the Vice Chancellor said, when you go abroad, people look at you and say, this is India. Education is also an SDG. And do you know, in Indian foreign policy, particularly in developing countries, particularly in Africa, Indian teachers and professors have played a massive role. In Ethiopia, if I'm coming at night, they used to see the Indian flag on the car and knock on the window, the young boys. And you would roll the window down, they all say, Salam Babuji. Why? Because their parents and grandparents had all been taught by Indians. All. And today that tide has turned. More Ethiopians come to India. In my book I have shown that the largest number of foreign community with PhD students is Ethiopia in India. It's not the largest foreign community, but largest PhD community. So they are very well planned. In Kenya, people are there, in many English-speaking countries, but today even French-speaking countries send, I'm sure many are here, but even all over India, I live in Greater Noida, there are so many African students and come from DR Congo, come from Congo, Brazzaville, come from Burundi, not English-speaking countries. Why do they come? Because the relevance of this education system. That is what happens. So, last few words now. This promise of communication is very important. We need to understand each other better. And if we do that, we will be able to attain many goals even beyond the SDGs. But the problem in diplomacy when we negotiate documents is that we say things we have no intention of implementing. If you look at the G7 communique recently, India was also there, we will do everything to curb the pandemic and spread the vaccine and this and that. And then you go to WTO, the same G7 countries will not approve a TRIPS waiver, which India and South Africa want, to reduce the cost of vaccine and its availability. Same country. Please remember, AIDS in Africa and meningitis in African children were both controlled thanks to Indian pharmaceutical and vaccines. So there is a great faith in Indian pharmaceutical capabilities. So I think when we are faced with this situation, time has come, let us say India and Germany, because Germany is the only European producer of vaccines. And they are the ones who feel most threatened by India in this regard, though they are partners of yours in many other ways. We should work together along with our other partners and say in every part of Africa, we should have regional centers of building vaccines. And then you will be able to create delivery systems. So the real challenge of communication and managing it is the delivery system. And the delivery system of all SDGs needs that communication management. I can tell you a lot of stories about communication. You know, we had a minister from Punjab who, when I was a young officer in Japan, visited Japan. And as a young person, he also wore a turban. As a young Japanese speaking officer, I was given the task of going and telling him at the airport that throughout this visit, we will be referring to you as Mr. B. Singh and not as Mr. Bhuta Singh. Why? Because in Japanese, Bhuta means pig. So every time you say Bhuta Singh, they'll all start laughing. So it digresses. So an understanding of that culture is very important. But with the Japanese, you shouldn't make jokes. I remember after liberalization, when I was sent back to Japan a second time, my biggest difficulty was keeping Indian bureaucrats back. Don't crack jokes. They don't understand them. So the flattest joke I ever heard was when we were discussing the trademark rights of Sony. You know, Sony television. At that time, Sony didn't want to come to India because they said our report says every third shop is called Sony. So we had to explain that in North India, Sony means beautiful, but it is spelled with an I, not with a Y. So we can protect Y, but why do you want to protect I? So I said, next you will say Sony 501 sharp soap would also be. I said, can't do this. So just as we have to understand, they also need to understand that you can't take common words from my language and patent them. Like there was a guy in Japan who happily patented garam masala. Then we found out the Indian embassy, we had to go and protest. He patented Ganesha. You can't patent these things. These are common Indian things here. So there are many problems like this of communication. And as I gave you an example of Indonesia, Indonesian language, 30,000 words from Sanskrit and Hindi. And yet we cannot understand each other. So, and today, the challenge of communication, which I'm sure Professor Khanna understands, is that it goes beyond generation. I mean, my and my wife's generation, we often cannot catch the idiom of my children. But today, half the time, I don't understand internet abbreviations. So this is what my daughter says, you are suffering from algorithmic anxiety. Now, this is true. When a diplomat is posted abroad, he suffers from cultural anxiety. But generally now there is algorithmic anxiety. So today when I went to the Aurobindo ashram, I discovered that Sri Aurobindo could actually speak fluently Greek and Latin. What a great diplomat you would have made. But then the Iranians wouldn't have understood him. So it is the competitiveness of modern cultures. You cannot take Coca-Cola and McDonald's and say this is it. It is not it. You have to respect everybody's culture. It is not cultural appropriation, it is cultural misuse which is happening too often. And the more you become globalized, the more respect you need to give, which means much better communication. And happily, communications do succeed. And Indian diplomats are often known to be among the best communicators, running the best Twitter handles, running the best websites in many parts of the world. In many international meetings, the drafts of all declarations will be brought to the Indian, saying, why don't you correct it? You probably understand this the best. It happens often. But all of us in the service went out and learned one additional language. I learned Japanese. And to conclude, let me tell you a funny story. I used to wear a turban in the early 80s which needed to be starched. You understand starch? So when my turbans all finally ran out and I had to starch them, I asked my Japanese teacher, what do I go and ask for? And she said, nori. Now, foolish me, I never realized that nori is what you eat, the seaweed. No, sushi, anybody know sushi? The seaweed around sushi is nori. So I went to the supermarket and said, nori. They took me to the food section and showed me the nori, which is the black seaweed. I said, no, this was not going on my turban. So something wrong in this communication. So I need to move on. So I went back to my teacher. I said, they took me to this. So she says, no, sentaku nori. Sentaku means washing. So I went. By the time all the girls knew whenever this guy turns up, there's great fun. So they all gathered. What does he want today? So I said, sentoki nori. And there was guffaws, laughter. And they even called the manager. Look what he's saying, sentoki nori. Ha ha ha. So I said, no what? And this was no mobile. You can't call anybody, no computer. So now I said, wait. I caught his hand. I said, come up with me. I took him to a washing machine. And I said, this nori which goes into this. He said, sentaku nori. I said, that's what I was saying. He said, no, you said sentoki nori. Why he was laughing made no sense to me. Anyway, I got my bottle of starch. 2-3 days later, my teacher said, what happened? I said, it was very embarrassing. I got it, but they all laughed. She said, what did you say? I said, sentoki nori. She also laughed. I said, no, this is too much. She said, sentaku, washing machine, sentoki, fighter plane. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, communication can be very difficult. It can give you many anxieties, but if you get it right, the future is before you. Thank you for your patience. I would like to take this occasion to specially present this comic to Professor Radhika Khanna.
Our rare honor and pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
I mean, it's online and I will share the PDF with you, but nothing like having the rare comic in your hand. And this is a gift to the Department of Electronic Media and Mass Communication.
And these also.
And so, sir, I will take them
Okay.
from you.
There are books on in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
It was absolutely delightful, and now they're going to have chairs here quickly. Leo, can you arrange 3 chairs? Lakshay is here from Oroville. Lakshay, please join us.
Can you give me a file, please, Leo?
Chairs, please.
Can you bring 3 chairs in the center? Yeah.
Oh, they're there.
Yeah, just bring them. Bring the table in here as well. Thank you. The table for the water, please.
Mr. Ayana, can you please give me my file?
It's below the camera, below the DSLR. Yeah, that's mine. question. And I think what's going to follow is going to be the icing on the cake. So
I need to be here?
yeah, you need to be here because the roundtable. You? Yes.
Okay. I'll just take this off first.
Nicholas, would you
You
like
want
to
this
join
off?
us? No, I thought as much, but I thought I'd just invite you. Okay. So, you all know Ambassador Gurjit Singh by now. As if we have known him forever, it feels like that. I invite Lakshya Dharan to join us on stage. He's just miking up. And Lakshya Dharan is, I think we just wait. Students, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. I invited Lakshya Dharan from Auroville. Lakshya Dharan is a strategist and communication expert, and he is the founder of Integral World and Aware Auroville. This morning, Ambassador Gurjit Singh and Mrs. Neeru Singh had a lovely visit to Sri Aurobindo Ashram, and they were filled with stories and ideas of Sri Aurobindo's life and how the ashram began and how this community is here in Pondicherry. It's special to Pondicherry, and Auroville is also very special, though it's not in Pondicherry. It is technically a part of the state of Tamil Nadu, but it's in the bioregion of Pondicherry, and most of us feel that Auroville and Pondicherry are one. And therefore, I'm very happy that Lakshya Dharan from Auroville, he's an Aurovillian. He's a strategist and communication expert, and I just said he's the founder of Integral World and Aware Auroville. And I have asked him to come in to pose some questions and talk about some things about what Auroville is facing as an international township, which was set up in 1968 with the Charter of Human Unity. And so basically, it's going to be spontaneous. It's not planned, and that's the fun.
Yeah.
That Lakshya has certain questions. He's been making his notes, I've been making mine. So we're going to ask Ambassador Gurjit Singh some questions, and I hope some of you are going to join us. Just raise your hand how many people have questions. 1, 2, 3, wonderful. Anyone from behind? Question? You want a question? Ask a question? No? Okay. So at least 3 people have questions. Richa, Sundaram, and who's the third person? Okay. So anyway, hold on to your questions. And at an opportune moment, all of you, if you feel that you want to ask a question in the middle of the conversation, you're welcome. Or you can hold on to it at the end of it. We'll take it in the floor. It's not fixed, but we have half an hour for this discussion on issues emerging from the ambassador's lecture and on issues that we feel are confronting our bioregion and the role of India, what role India can play in the world. Okay. So, Lakshya, I ask you to start off the process with your question. Your mic.
Are you all audible? Thank you. Yeah. First of all, thank you, sir, Ambassador Gurjit Singh, for the beautiful talk, and also all the distinguished guests here. First of all, I would like to also thank you for mentioning social entrepreneurs. Being one, I felt really good to hear that. And I work in the field of strategy and communication. It was of very nice invitation to come and hear you. So I have come here to learn from you, rather. So that was the whole idea, and she graciously invited me to come and be part of the discussion. Thank you, Dr. Ratna. So to give a little bit of background, you mentioned about the countries. So in Auroville, we have residents from over 60 countries. And you would be happy to know that most of the countries you are served in, there are people from Indonesia, Ethiopia, Germany, a big population from Germany. And I'm also thankful to Ministry of External Affairs for this beautiful lecture series. I visited the website and I've seen about 303 lectures already, which has happened. I think it's incredible for India. And I believe students and our population will benefit out of this sharing exactly 75, and he was invited to say something for India's independence, and he gave 5 dreams for India. I invite all the students. I have written it down, but due to the paucity of time, I will not get into it. It's a beautiful passage. 5 dreams. I believe it would be really inspiring if all of you can go and read it once. Basically, to give a gist of it, the 5 dreams basically say the first one is about an united India. The second one is about the emergence of Asia in the world scene. And in 1947, he talked about world union of some sorts. By then, 1945, the United Nations already had come into a being. But then he was looking at far more, a unification of different sorts, of a much greater, deeper sorts. And the fourth dream was about self-perfection. And the fifth one was about self-realization. So amongst these, the spiritual gift was one of key theme that he talked about, India being a spiritual gift to the world. So drawing inspiration from that, I'm going to ask the first, it's more like a question, like you said, I didn't come much prepared. So I would like to ask you a question on pertinent to this topic, that we talked about India's social impact. What is your view on the soft power status of India, and how India can use the aspect of social impact to project the soft power of India?
Thank you. So, today the world is divided between the Gurjit and the Gurmeet. Gurjit, Jeet is a strategic hard concept of victory. Gurmeet, Meet is a concept of brotherhood. That is soft power. So there is a difference. Traditionally, India has adopted soft power. But today, as I mentioned, the world is becoming more and more bipolar and becoming more militaristic. So, because of the action of the US, China, and to an extent Russia. So, everybody has to follow. India is also spending more and more on defense and reducing spending on other areas. Overseas, that we should not culturally appropriate anything. We have to be more or social. How you become the meat. Because Buddhism is in Sri Lanka, Buddhism is in India. It should be actually a unifying factor. Is it? The Ramayana and the Mahabharata are very well regarded in Southeast Asia. Have they been used to build relations? So I think now work is happening on all this. So I'll leave it there. It is very important, but very often hard power is more urgent, but I think soft power needs to be implemented for the long term.
Thank you. Dr. Jaishankar also, in his recent interview, very nicely mentioned that we are too much dependent on Eurocentric policies. And our worldview, even for Indian or people from Asia, is predominantly Eurocentric. So that shift has to come about, and to an extent it is coming forth, I believe. What is your view on, you mentioned about the Indian model, acceptance of Indian model. How come the West has successfully put forth various development organizations in the name of Oxfams or USAID or GIZ? Though we do a lot of aid work in Afghanistan, in Sri Lanka, like you mentioned, or Myanmar, why didn't we ever proactively put forth an organization like India Aid or something that goes and works in the global south? I believe India, like you rightly also mentioned, reference to it, that India is a great example for the developing nations. They can't look up to the developed Americas or the Europe, and they cannot look up to the developed China either. So India presents a very working model.
Very true. What you say is absolutely true. So within the Ministry of External Affairs, for I think about a decade now, we have something called the Development Partnership Administration. So that is within the ministry and it coordinates all the grant work which India does overseas. But a lot of work is outside that as well. So in the case of many countries, the aid agency has much more resources, whereas ours is limited by the budget allocated to MEA by the Ministry of Finance. So we do at best, and as I said, our neighbors take the first priority, so those are givens. But our model is known. So today, under triangular cooperation, many Western countries and Japan actually want to work with India in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, in Africa, and that's working. But in the next 2022 to 2025, the G20 is going to be continuously chaired by countries of the global south. Indonesia, next year India, then Brazil, then South Africa. This is the best time for the global south, including India, to step forth with a funded program. Why are we dependent only on our friends in the West? We must also be able to do things, even in a limited way. Others will come with us. That will bring not only funds, but a vision as well. So I think that is where we, as leaders of the global south, need to go.
With China, we started, not just us, I believe, AIIB, towards this creating a fund to develop nations, developing nations. And I believe recently we are also exploring something with the Japan to put together a fund which we can then create something of a parallel to, say, BRI. How do you think India can make use of this opportunity? And second aspect is what, I mean, being a communication person, I would like to bring upon the focus of, the West per se is very smart in leveraging juice, the branding juice out of, say, each buck they spend compared to India. How can India be also kind of smart enough in doing that?
So the AIIB actually is a Chinese-led fund, which India is a member. But the BRICS has a new development, of which we are all equal members. The AIIB, we are not equal members. In my view, under the G20, the global south should lead with a broader version of the NDP, and all our friends like France, Germany, UK will all join because of the trilateral funding approach that I told you. So I think we can then take the lead and bring our model to bear. Happily, others will, including Japan, will come in their own ways. But it is easier said than done, because more and more the contention is overtaking the coordination. So you are not only saying, I want my voice heard, you're also telling all your friends to be quiet and not break up the G20, for instance. So our responsibilities are growing and we need to look at it.
Yeah, I just take the mic. It was very interesting to hear about the case studies about the Barefoot College at Telonia, and how civil society, the example of Seva, I think is on. This works, yeah. So basically, even the example of Seva that Sir shared. How many of you know about Seva? Just raise your hands. Just raise your hands nicely, loud. Yeah, okay. So go back and Google. Go to Google Guru and find out about what is this entity called Seva and what is the radical and very interesting work they've done at the grassroots with women. Similarly, Barefoot College, how people have been educated at nights, I mean, even in India, the work that has been done, it's very, very remarkable. How many about you know about Barefoot College? 2.
Oh, well done.
So very good. So you can share a little bit about it. You can share a little bit about it, Sundaram. She's a PhD scholar here in the Department of Electronic Media Mass Communication. So the thing is, these examples that Ambassador Gurjit Singh has cited, sir, what I wanted to say, you said there are many more case studies like that. But that also...
They're all in my book.
Wonderful. And do we have, that's a new book, Harambe. So we need to get it. We need to get the copies. So the thing is, this whole, like he said, this is based on, Harambe, the Swahili word for cooperation. Now, and that is what to me even Auroville represents, that cooperation, how people from so many diverse nationalities and countries from across the world have left their countries and they have become residents of Auroville. They are permanently here for the last 50 years, 30 years, 40 years. They have created Auroville with their own thing. So like, I was trying parallels that you were saying, it's not only about the intention or the words, it's the action, the realization of the intention. So my question to Ambassador Gurjit Singh is that we have these examples like you have cited, and there are a few more that which are iconic examples for us. But we can see largely the young generation is not aware that these have existed or they're doing work. How do you see that the future that is sitting ahead and facing us here, this young generation, 21, 22, 23, 25 years, what is your suggestion to them that how can they also, we're not talking about social enterprise only, I'm talking about how do you become change makers, how do you become those agents for cooperation, how do you become those agents for change where something good, a model, a practice can be worked out on a pilot level with a community, which happened in Telonia, and then it goes global that people and women from other countries come and learn from you. What are the kind of skill sets or attitudes that we need as young people to be able to start up another Barefoot College or another Seva?
Well, one of the other programs that we did was with the All India Management Association, and it was particularly for African students in India. So during summer, in a program funded by us from the MEA at that time, we used to do a program for 15 days, giving them skills of management, how a business is run, taking them to real places, not only lectures, but meeting with people. The idea was that if when they went back, they need not look for a job, but they should have a business idea, take a technology from India and set up a business, and hopefully some banks would finance that. Now that idea has been developed in many more ways with many new financing arrangements available. So today, for instance, waste disposal in a community is very important, solid waste management. When I go to IIT, they say this, that. I said, yeah, all this is fine. How many of you have been to the village outside your gate? Have you gone and tried to sort that village out? At least go and check, are they all vaccinated? I said, don't give me this social jargon of being involved. Go and tell me within the next 6 months when I come back, what did you do? Can you help the people of the village get their rights under the Ayushman Bharat, under the Ujala? So many schemes, but people find it difficult to get there. Government has schemes. You need change makers to help them get there. So you can have these help groups, you can help the people, help them to get vaccinated, help their children to get all their neonatal and post up to 5 years, all the vaccinations. Simple things which government has facilitated at grassroots level require attention. And I encourage all educated people to make that little contribution to society. Where business ideas are concerned, I still believe that we generate so much waste. Waste management, recycling is an amazing place that we should stay. And all communities have that opportunity.
I hope it touches a chord with many of you, because we have in the last week talked about entrepreneurship and how to start media startups, how to look at budget, scope, time, and all these resources available so that we all can start in our hearts and heads, start working on ideas which maybe will find fruition one day if we think and work enough on it. It's thinking and also working on it. Because without working, it's again, like he said, it's just an idyllic, like a coffee table conversation that let's do something. But like he's saying, are we the educated, privileged class to have higher education and everything? How are we sharing it with others who need that? Do we feel a sense of moral responsibility or a commitment to that? So I urge each one of you to take his words and reflect upon them, mull upon them, so that before you leave the gates of Pondicherry University, maybe what he talked about, social enterprise, impact investment, being a change maker, who knows? I mean, you could be one of the few people who could herald a change wherever you are from whichever part of the country. You'll all go back to your respective places, right? We have students from all over the country. Yeah. So now we'll take questions. Yeah. Introduce yourself. Here, please give the mic to him. Can somebody come a little faster? You can come and take it. And can you have the camera on the student, please? Can the camera be here? Be here, my dear. Just be here. So that, why don't you come up on the stage, please, so that because there's only one cam. Please, and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Videsh from Masters in International Relations. In your speech, you repeatedly highlighted on the importance of soft power vis-a-vis Southeast Asia. You have made your contribution with respect to Indonesia. Again, sir, in his question, asked the importance of soft power. Sir, with respect to soft power vis-a-vis Southeast Asia, we have seen that under India's active policy, the Prime Minister Modi has been trying to develop this entire Buddhist circuit, which is a important part of soft power. And again, Rama and Mahabharata with respect to Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, these are important aspects. But so how can you think we can foster relations with respect to the common ethnic links that Northeast India and Southeast Asia share? For example, the Aun community in Assam has their origins in Thailand. Many Manipuri and Naga communities have they share some cultural relations with communities in Myanmar. Similarly, the Mizo communities share their cultural relations with Myanmar. How can you think the Indian government at large can help fostering the cultural and ethnic links between Northeast India and Southeast Asia in order to culturally link the Northeast as the part of the larger geography of Southeast Asia? Thank you, sir.
We'll take other questions also.
Together? Okay. So other people can also just come up. The ambassador is saying that you can take, come up here, please, quickly, just run down. So we'll also have you on people can see you who's asking the question. So he would prefer that you all give the question and then he'll answer them. Please come on the stage. Yeah, please come. Please introduce yourself and let everybody see who's asking the question. Yeah. You can come up a little up front. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Are you feeling a little bit shy?
No, don't be shy. Be comfortable.
Good evening to all of you. I, Chinmay Roy, MA South Asian Studies, is being here. First of all, thank you, sir, for your informative speech. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. So my question is that as the world is now changing, artificial intelligence is coming, machine learning is coming, and now many nations are moving like they are more of technologically oriented. Their foreign policy, anything is now technologically oriented. So like USA, we have IBM, Apple. So like Japan have Sony, Nikon, Suzuki. Germans have Lufthansa, Mercedes. So every nation have some technological development from their own through self-reliance. So what do you think, sir, what India can do so that we can produce our own technologies and we can become good exporter? Because for example, as you know, there's a shortage of semiconductors, and for laptops and mobiles you need semiconductors, and most of the laptops which are coming are of second hand. So how can India become a technologically empowered nation? Because without manufacturing and without technology, as a visionary person, we can't move forward for 10, 20 years.
Thank you so much.
We will take one more.
We have two more questions. Okay. Third question. Yeah, Richa, please come up. Is the mic working? Do you have good audio from the students? I don't think the level is good enough. Is in the recording, Umesh, you're getting the students' question? Then it's okay. Yeah, Richa.
Hello, sir. This is Richa Singh, and I'm from Nagaland. So I've written a lot of things. So I would like to start with one of the lines shared by you in this lecture. That is, future is us, but we don't get jobs. The resilient value chain is of no value. No placement, more placements. Master students getting job of just 7K monthly. However, there is exploitation of labor on the other hand because of the lower employment rate in India. And they need to work more than required. Even weekends are not excused, health of the worker is ignored. How are we supposed to have a better standard of living, which is one of the human rights, and good health, which is both a basic human right and as well as a sustainable development goal? On the other hand, someone in a secure job who do nothing at all till they retire. There is no balance in anything, which makes us the third world country and the developed one as the first world countries. With lived-in experience and real-life experience shared by one of my professors who is currently doing her master's, who is currently doing her doctorate, under Dr. Srinivas Naikod from Organised University, United States. Coming to education, universities and schools were shut down, especially government colleges, and schools faced a lot of issues. Once with funding and private institutes smoothly ran online classes, what about the education in states like northeast part of the India and rural India? What have the future younger generation have learned? Coming from Nagaland, right to education and quality education as one of the SDGs is a big question mark in India. Now, migration of knowledge and labor is highly been taking place and mostly to countries like the US and Australia because losing opportunities in India. Coming to intercultural communication with jokes on communication in Japan as one of the examples shared by you, comes a problem of racism and the most serious one being the COVID-19, Asian hate and George Floyd's killing in the US, hate towards the black communities as a whole. The Rohingyas are the ones who are facing a lot of torture from Myanmar border force. There are cases of rapes on Rohingya women by the Myanmar border force as per one of the research papers done by me on paper media and human rights. Minorities are getting mob lynched in part of this country. Communication is difficult, I know, but listening helps as one of the major things taught to us by Dr. Radhika Khanna. Learning by listening and observing, which lacks in a lot of us. We lack patience and ego is another issue with titles in front of our names and surnames behind our names as the caste system makes its way up. With murders and rape cases related to Dalit and a lot of tribal communities, with actors mocking Adivasis and lower caste communities from the area. In a country which mocks and uses Bihari as a slur, where are we heading to? Development, education is again a big question mark. Coming to communication again, banning of Chinese applications during the pandemic, but we still export a lot of things from China. In fact, China is one of the largest exporters. So these are some of the points which I try to critically connect to your lecture with whatever I come across in my day-to-day life. As a student of communication, this is my
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
Okay.
The first question was he was a student of Asian studies and he said Assam and all.
The first question,
Can you
No.
please, yeah, can you,
did you ask about the Northeast?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yes,
Northeast.
right. And the second question?
The second question was no.
Yeah, what was your focus? On technical, no, why? Yeah, what?
Semiconductor.
Yeah, all right. So let's begin with the Northeast because both the first and third questions have some thing. So, see, I don't want to go into the history, but let me just tell you that there is under the Act East policy an idea that India has a land bridge with ASEAN, which is through Myanmar and through Myanmar to Thailand. So there are two very important projects which India is doing under the India-ASEAN cooperation with Myanmar and Thailand. One project is called the Trilateral Highway. It begins, I think, in Manipur, More, right? And it crossed to Mesot and up to Thailand, right? 1,360 kilometers, I think. And that project is supposed to link these Northeast India with Myanmar and with Thailand. At the moment, there is only border trade. It can become international trade. If this highway is to succeed, a large amount of investment in industrial clusters in Northeast India is necessary so that they have exportable surplus to use this highway to export. We can't simply go on border trade. It has to be much bigger. So, since Ministry of External Affairs is implementing the Trilateral Highway, they are also working with Japan under the India-Japan Northeast Forum to precisely do this. A, build infrastructure on Northeast side. B, start some industrial clusters by looking at local produce and seeing how, whether it is food or it's bamboo or rattan, things like that. I don't think it has gone far, but the forum is only 3-4 years old, I think 2020. So it has started. So this work has started. And I think the state governments and chambers of commerce in northeastern states are showing a lot of interest in the ASEAN countries, and they are more and more going there. Recently, there was a big festival of Northeast in Bangkok. So it is to raise awareness, bring the tourism, trade, services potential together. But what she asked, there is a sense of deprivation in the Northeast. So we need to fill that. So we want more educated people from Northeast to also go back to their states. But this is not to say that they should not partake of pan-Indian opportunities. That is not to say that. It is your option if you want to go back. Now this links up to what he asked. Why is there no Indian technological growth? Why is there no Indian Google? So we are very proud on WhatsApp to keep sending a list of international tech companies all headed by Indians, but they are not Indian companies. So what is it that even a mediocre student in India can go to the US and head a big giant, but why can't he create it here? I am not able to understand it, but I think if you look at Startup India, you look at Digital India, you look at the Atal Innovation Mission, I think all these are happening. And when I talk to my friend Amitabh Kant, who was the CEO of Niti, they have got statistics to show that while they are not 100% success, there is a rapid success rate happening. So all that is happening now is that, see, India is a big country, but we are trying to do certain things. We don't have our own Google, but we have our own Tata. We have our own Reliance. I mean, these are big companies who are now trying to bring in big tech into India. But you ultimately boil down to what is an Indian idea. And I believe impact investment is an Indian idea. The success, it may not have been born in India, but they brought it out over here. Same way, we have got diverted in startups to high value consumption without going necessarily into production. You can create a jewelry brand, you can create a food delivery, and they have very high brand value. Whereas if you produce something, your brand value is low. So to cut all this, I would say two big ideas which I have been thinking. One, we are thinking of solar power and all. Can we create voice into power? I mean, I love to talk, no? Can I power my own house on what I talk? Can a singer power his house by what he sings? Doing riyaz every day, can you power your house? Can you convert sound to power? Don't have the answer, but I don't think it's impossible. Second, the international value chains are now quarreling over lithium, because that is the EV, and that comes from Africa, and Chinese are taking control. Why not a post-lithium battery, which is based on what we have in India, and not based on what? Then you raise the value of what you have, no? That becomes the dominant. And you can have, therefore, a electric vehicle which is not dependent on a Chinese value chain. That is important. So I think these are two ideas which I have been sort of floating in my mind, that how can we work on this. I hope I tried to touch upon each of your answers I don't have all the answers, I only have suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yeah, the next question, you please come up here. Yeah, take the mic. You can stand here as well. So check mic level is okay. Come up on the dais so that the camera covers. Come here. Come close. Yeah. Yeah.
Very good evening. I have two questions. The first question would be, how far has India been successful in using its soft power in the IOR to implement its necklace of diamond policy, I believe, to counter the string of pearls of China, and also the BRI, which is funding a lot of foreign initiatives, I believe. So that is my first question. And the second question would be, considering the Russian-Ukraine crisis, so the US recently said that India is not violating sanctions by buying discounted crude oil from Russia. So also the White House released a statement quite recently, which I quote, where do you want to stand when the history books are written? So considering the fact that India also abstained from voting against Russia, so what could be the future implications to India's foreign policy in your view, sir?
IORA, Ukraine, and first one was?
My first one was the string of pearls.
String of pearls, yes, IORA, yeah. So, you know, the string of pearls is a power concept. IORA is a liberal concept. So, the two are not the same. IORA cannot counter the BRI because it is a more functional cooperation, excluding China. But this year, IORA is 25 years old. So now I think they are thinking how to become a part of the Indo-Pacific policy. And while Indo-Pacific is the strategic concept, IORA will be the functional part of it and expand more. But this is still idea in the making. At the moment, you cannot use IORA to counter BRI. In fact, to counter BRI, there are very few elements.
No, sorry, sir, I was not referring to IORA as basically referring to the Indian Ocean region. I was referring to the necklace of diamond policy that I recently was listening to Dr. Jaishankar speaking about it. So therefore I brought this up.
Yeah, so IORA is an Indian Ocean Rim Association, which brings about 25 countries of Indian Ocean Rim together. Not all. Pakistan is not there, China is not, China is not there. But it has many partners like Iran, Bangladesh and all, and who are all part of a wider thing. So today the contention is that you have to deal with everybody. Everybody can be a friend, everybody can be a problem. So you have to deal with everybody on their own. You cannot depend on anybody else. And the world has become very transactional. You can't say we both got independence in 47, so it doesn't work like that. How much did you pay last time for a project? That matters. Second part was about Ukraine, right?
Yes.
Russia and Ukraine. So you said oil is not sanctioned. Gas is. See, the NATO and sanctions also cover what they think they can easily do. Russian oil is not sanctioned. So you can buy Russian oil. In fact, the reports are that Russian oil is being bought, processed in India and actually sold to the United States. So that also happens. These are commercial deals. Governments are not involved. So the problem will come when Russian oil gets sanctioned. Then there's a problem. Russian gas doesn't really impact India. It impacts Europe. But when you said, where will you be when the history books stand? We must write our own history, and B, we should always stand on our own feet, not leaning on anybody. Mao used to say, lean to one side. No. India needs to stand firm. We have friends, good partners like Germany, France, Europe, but India needs a multipolar world. We need ASEAN, we need Russia, we need Europe, we need Latin America, we need Africa. We can't afford them to become part of a bipolar world. So we must try and bring them into a world which can still survive without becoming bipolar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sundaram? Yeah, please come. No, you have to ask from here. This is a part of because there are people who are watching the YouTube live stream. They would like to see you, right? Oh, sorry. Wait. Yeah. The mic closer.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, for whatever you have just delivered today, the lecture. I was remembering because I have been on an entrepreneurial train journey 4 times, and there I experienced that social entrepreneurship idea, Seva, or Barefoot Colonia, or maybe Arvind Eye Care in Madurai. So these are the models which we look for, that how we can create sustainable future and using the entrepreneurship. So one of the ideas I would also like to share, which was given by one of the professor from this university, from other department, one of workshops happening in our department, and it was organized by our master's students only, Rooted. It was a program Rooted for sustainable development program. So he said we are using these mobile phones and batteries. So where are going this waste material, e-waste material? It can also be a good idea to have a startup or a new entrepreneurship model. So I just reflected upon that. My question was, half of the question was covered by Laksh sir. So my question was that idea of development is very much Eurocentric, and if country like Bhutan, they can have their own development index, like they are showing that happiness index, satisfaction, how their people, their country are happy, and they are not following that development index which the other countries of the world are following. So why can't India have their own development index which is not following those indicators which has been given by the Western countries? So where we stand on that to have our development index? Thank you.
So I think through Niti Aayog and others, India is developing many such indices. For instance, ease of doing business, and such things. We are putting up our own indices now, having learned from the others, and we are trying to remove the biases, or sometimes they are not biases, they just misplaced priorities which are not your own. So we are trying to create our own indices on several things. For instance, the entire aspirational districts program is very much a rooted program in India, which has selected some districts and trying to focus all government programs there. This is what I was saying. I mean, this aspiration can be fulfilled in your next village by you without having to wait for the government to do so. And in this case, the young lady there who spoke, I want to tell you, Richa, the Prime Minister in his last Independence Day address, he said about lifestyle changes. So I think you asked about consumption, right? So it is important that when you want to achieve the SDGs, you should at the same time not want to lead to the same consumption level that what you call the first world has gone, because they are moving back from it. So we don't have to go there before coming back. We need to move to a sustainable lifestyle now, before we become too polluted. So this is not to say that Indians do not drive cars, Indians should not have refrigerators, but at the same time, your carbon imprint should be better measured, exactly what, our own measurement, how can we reduce it? For instance, moving from the chula to gas, Ujjwala scheme. Well, theoretically, that's a good idea, no? It reduces that carbon. How can you do more to reduce carbon imprint, waste disposal, power plants, coal plants, many things? So that I think we are now looking at, and that is why India has adopted better INDCs, but individual moderation of our lifestyle is also called for.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Is
you.
there any other question? Any other person? I think I saw one more hand. Or
Meanwhile, maybe I can, while somebody else thinks. Just related to the questions here, do you think, two-part question, do you think the new National Education Policy 2020 would help in changing the mindset? Primarily, I think we are also not an entrepreneurial country because our education is such, based on rote learning and so on and so forth. So we do not as such promote risk taking, and the threshold of failure is too low for us. So with this new education policy, can that mindset be changed? The second part is that for in terms of Global South and our export, it need not be always product. No, for example, for the Middle East, a lot of our export has been human knowledge and expertise and labor. So can we also use the social impact as a means to export talented people to, like you mentioned, in Ethiopia, people knocking on your door and saying, Saab, basically education. So in education, in healthcare, in social enterprises, in these three areas I see a lot of possibility, and we should not undermine our grassroots Jugaad doctrine also, which we are quite an expert in.
So your first part, about the education policy. So I think Richa also asked this question, and so did the gentleman there.
Yes.
When she started her question, she said we don't get jobs. Whereas what he said was, why aren't we entrepreneurial? I mean, there is a contradiction. I mean, you can see the difference here. So there are campus recruitments, right? But where is the support to campus entrepreneurship? That needs to come. So this is what we discuss at various Sankalp dialogue, that how do we start going to campuses? At the moment we are only going to people who are coming to us. But as we grow bigger, we should go and come here so that people say, okay, you got ideas, I am going to now stay, okay, let's do a. So by the way, if you want to watch, I think end of this month, 27, 28, 29, there is the Sankalp Global Summit. You can see it, it's for free at the moment, there's no tickets, and it's all virtual this year. So you will get many ideas on entrepreneurship, see what the world is talking about in following the SDGs. It's a pretty good thing that you can do. Now, the second part that you asked me was about the people. So, the Indian diaspora, which went to East Africa, actually took many good social impact into those countries. In those countries, and today we were talking to the Vice Chancellor who has spent some years in Kenya, education, hospitals, Jaipur foot, lip, this cleft lip, smile. So many Indian programs have come to Africa, not through government intervention, simply because the Indian diaspora took them there. So this has happened. It happened a lot. It happened in the United States. Yes, but the problem is the Indian diaspora also carries a lot of bad habits with them, no? Which we wish they would leave behind and therefore become better. But they do good things and they are respected for it. So I think those should become the models. And now impact investment from India is already moving into Africa. There are so many discussions. Around my book, I have done 3 discussions in different parts of Africa focusing on impact and financial inclusion. But these are Indian ideas, financial inclusion. I mean, Indian ideas in the sense a mass scale financial inclusion is an Indian idea. And that is what we are looking. So this India stack, the entire bunch of things through India stack, we are discussing with so many countries now how to implement. So we can conclude.
Is there any other question? Should we conclude? I think we'll conclude. It's 5:53. Okay, I think it went off. Okay, I'll just take my notes. Okay, so I am very thankful to Ambassador Gurjit Singh for stoking a lot of thought, and I can see on the faces, the body language, the non-verbal communication tells me that what he said made sense to many of you, and that's a very good sign. So thank you, Ambassador. Let's give him a big hand. Leo, your camera should be there. Your camera should be there. Yeah, so just give a big hand once again so Leo can get a picture. Yeah, Leo.
Thank you.
So I really want to thank him because it's like in Hindi we say nichod, like a lifetime of doing things, absorbing things, responding to things, integrating them into yourself, digesting them, making their own, and then being at that stage where you can offer it back to the universe. And so graciously in the beginning he addressed all of you that you are the future. And you are the ones who are going to make a difference, and he has a lot of hopes in you. And I hope that you and me and all of us here in the university, and I'm so thankful to the other students from other departments who have come along, the courses of international relations and South Asian studies.
so we could really have a good interchange and exchange of ideas. So I want to thank from our heart, on behalf of Pondicherry University, Ambassador Gurjit Singh for giving us his time, his knowledge, his wisdom, and his very insightful comments and indications on which are the directions we should be looking at. And these are really relevant. These are not some esoteric, thinking in silos, like just about telling you some academic content. It's about a pragmatic realization of ideas so that the world can change and that you and I, all of us, can be instruments of that change. So thank you for facilitating the process. I want to thank Professor Gurjit Singh, who has left a little earlier, but he was there for the first 15-20 minutes, for his constant encouragement and support in doing activities which are outside, just what the academic framework is. Because unless and until we engage in co-curricular and extracurricular activity to enrich ourselves, we would have very limited views. So it's extremely important that we reach out and we hear people who are not teaching us on a regular level, but they are teachers. And one such teacher is with us today. Thank you, sir. All the main officers of the university who are not here today, but I want to put on record their constant support and encouragement for the entire Pondicherry University community for us to grow and expand our horizons. I would like to thank Dr. K. Tharinakarasu, the director in charge, the Directorate of Studies, Education, Innovations and Rural Reconstruction, Professor Rajiv Jain, the Director of Culture and Cultural Relations, Dr. Amaresh Samantaraya, the Registrar in charge, Dr. D. Lazar, the Finance Officer, Professor C.K. Ramaiah, the Dean of School of Media and Communication, and I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us today from all the departments, students, scholars, and of course my colleagues and faculty from other departments. Also a warm thanks to Lakshit Haran, an Aurovilian, who accepted my invitation at a very short notice to join us so that we could kind of have more stimulating thought on the dais. My thanks to Nicholas Joffrey, Head of Communications from the Consulate General of France in Pondicherry in Chennai, for joining us, and we look forward to an informal interaction after the lecture is over. A big thanks to Vignesh Gukul. Give him a big hand, and stand up, Vignesh, so that you can get a picture. Yes. So here is Vignesh. Give him a big hand. He's not only a good flautist, but a person who is always generous and sharing his talent with us on repeated requests. So thank you for bearing with us and sharing the joy of music. Okay. And like I said earlier on, for people who came late, Vignesh is from Mauritius and he's a foreign student in the department, and it's such a beautiful expression of cooperation and collaboration and love and sharing, where we merge and we dissolve all these borders because there are things that unite us, and music is one of them. Thank you so much. So I also want to thank the Vice Chancellor's Secretariat. They have been very supportive. The Public Relations Officer, Mr. Mahesh, and his section, the Computer Center, who's helped us with the technical things here and there, the Electrical Wing that has extended support at all times, the Horticulture Wing, which has helped in the preparation of the venues and which has prepared the saplings for the ambassador to plant after the tea, and Educational Multimedia Research Center, which I'm an integral part of, and I'm very happy to be with them. And you can give them a very big hand because they work a lot and they work silently. Yeah. So to the entire team of EMRC, thank you so much for support. They are doing the YouTube live stream that is coming to all of you or whoever is there on the internet watching the live stream. The guest house of Pondicherry University for also giving their cooperation. And if I have left any person, just a thank you to all of you. To the audiences, if there are any at various places across the world, which the internet is helping us to bridge and reach out, I want to thank you for being there, for giving your eyes and ears, your time, your attention, and I hope that what Ambassador Gurjit Singh shared with all of us will create some value and some virtue and change the quality of our lives. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to have a high tea. So the guests and all faculty and all, please join us in a room next to the auditorium. Students, you'll be getting refreshments later on. And then just let's walk down to the department. It's just a 2 minutes walk. And let's have a celebration of nurturing and respecting Mother Nature and Mother Earth, which is what is giving us the sustenance. We can talk about SDGs because the universe is giving us everything. We are just utilizing and monetizing it. And as he said, we need to do waste management, we need to do recycling. All the suggestions he gave, we need to give back because we have got so much. Okay? So join us in the tree plantation together and let's have a cup of tea and something to eat. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Bless you. Thank you. Yeah, photograph. Just take. Matt, take one photograph.
Should I say?
All the students, why don't you come? Let's take a group photograph, like our ritual that we have at the end.